And I'm like, we're not the right person. Because the truth is, there are a lot of people selling you this idea that if you start making content, that's going to be another revenue stream. And I don't know your experience, but that is not an immediate revenue stream. That is a long-term brand play that ideally will feed into your funnel or give you connections or whatever. But if you're looking for sales and immediate results, there are things that you can do a lot faster. And so I'm still a proponent of content. Content's changed my life, but go into it with the mindset that it's a long-term brand play.
Well, welcome to the show. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I'm super pumped to have Heather Parady here on our call today. We're going to get the insights of her and her story about her marketing genius and expertise, and we're going to get some help with how she creates all of her content and some strategies. So stay tuned to that. Before we jump in, if you'd like some training on how to build a brand, how to get sales coaching and training, there's a whole training down below that you can jump into that's going to be super helpful for you. Heather, jumping right into it though, in our conversation, what is high performance? What does that look like for you? Because you've been in all sorts of different industries and backgrounds and all sorts of things that you do as a creator. You have a bigger online influence, and you help a lot of people with coming up with these different strategies with everything you're doing. How do you go about being a high performer and really kind of leveraging that? What would you say your definition or how you would react to that?
There was a woman you interviewed. It was a couple of episodes back. Her name was Elizabeth somebody. She wrote Cake on Tuesday. Forgive me, I don't remember her last name, but check it out. Good episode. She said that really failure is a good mark of high performance. And I wanted to slap somebody when she said that, because when we think of high performance, we think strength. We think this badass person who comes in here and just kicks everybody's butt and can whatever. What she pointed to is this failure where you have reached the brink of, I cannot do anything else. And I just hired a fitness coach this year, and it was just terrible because every time I worked out with her, she's like, you got 2 more in you. And I'm like, no, I do not. I do not have 2 more in me. She says, you have 2 more in you. And I would do it and I would just almost scream and cry. And I've never pushed my body to that point. And it was unreal the amount of reps that I actually had in me, but I had never pushed myself till failure. And she taught me about how failure is really the goal. And so high performance, I mean, we think about I'm not enough because I'm not performing like X person or whatever, as opposed to your guest who brilliantly pointed it out. Your high performance is getting to that line of failure and doing 1 more rep because you know you've given everything that you've got.
I love that. I think that there's a point of that. I think people don't realize their brink, their failure, or their line in the sand moment that pushes them to do something deeper, more focused, to get something out. And I love that.
Well, and let me push on that even more, because you and I were just having this really important conversation that I have been having every day as a content creator, as a producer, as a business owner. You know, we are living in this beautiful time. I love it, where there are so many things at our fingertips, and it's just produce faster. It's never enough. And so we think of high performance, we also think of more. When it's interesting, people who do things really well, it's they've figured out how to do a little bit less and do it better. And that's so counterintuitive to our culture, because it's like, unless you're freaking firing at all cylinders 24/7, you're failing. And we've forgotten, you're a former pastor, you know this, we've forgotten our humanity and what we were designed to do. And that it's not necessarily about, you know, I'm going to run through this brick wall and coach my kids' basketball team and run a 7-figure business and be a popular influencer and be 100 pounds. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not about it's about this intentional calling and knowing that we've given everything we have. You know, and the Bible talks about your cup and, making sure that you've given everything and that you've been faithful with the thing that's in your hand.
And you help so many people with this, because you have a business that coaches people being a CEO or COO. And you also are an influencer, and you are actually a host of your own podcast, The Unconventional Leader, like, how do you balance all of this? Like, what do you serve people with? Let me ask that question first, and then we can dive into some deeper stuff. Like, what do you do there that serves people most? Like, what would be, what people know you most about?
Clarity and direction. I'm really, really good at when I work with someone who's a visionary who has a lot of ideas and they're just busting and they're so hard on themselves about how they're not able to fulfill everything that they've written on their to-do list, how to calm down a little bit, look at their vision and get really still with the calling that's on their life and strategically pick what is the next best move for me. The way I'm personally able to handle it, I have an incredible husband who's generous and kind and understanding, and we have fought a lot and it's been hard, but figuring out a really good cadence to where there's good communication, where he understands that his wife is fiery and he's strong enough to be able to handle that. I can't give him enough credit for the support that he's given me. And that's not taking away from my strength. I just want to highlight his, that it takes a community to really do things well.
And you have kids too, and you have to have that partnership so well tied together. Otherwise, there's oftentimes, the kids can bring diversity in the marriage too if things aren't aligned there. So that's.
Oh yeah, man, for sure. I got a 12-year-old. You talk about diversity, man. Like the things that are coming out of her mouth, I'm like, Lord Jesus needs to help me with her.
Yeah. Totally get that with my kids as well. Oh, tell us the beginning stages. I mean, you had 0 followers once. Now you have over 50,000 followers on Instagram. Where was all the beginning? Where did this all start from the very beginning of your entrepreneurship journey? How do you know that you were wired a little bit different? Bring us to that kind of season and story there.
So I was called to ministry too. I went to ministry school to be a minister. That's been my life's calling since I was a little girl. Grew up in church and knew in my bones that God had a calling on my life. And I interpreted that, as most young people do, that ministry equals a church building. And through a series of events, I found myself in school learning to be a therapist. So maybe I could help people that way. Got my degree, sat into a room where they called my name for a job interview, got the job, cried my eyes out, called my husband and said, "Oh my God, I have a job. What am I supposed to do now?" He said, "Heather, most people don't cry when they get jobs. What's going on with you?" And I knew in my bones that there was an unconventional path that I was being called to. And I just knew I needed to build something on my own. And I'm not a natural builder. I don't think, you've known me for 30 minutes now, you probably see it. I think human first, numbers later. And that may be seen as a weakness, maybe. But scaling in dollars and all of that has not ever really been my main priority. I want to reach people and I want to make an impact. And I know numbers have a lot to do with that, but I've never, I'm not the traditional business person. So I was thinking, I'm really screwed. I'm too entrepreneurial to be a pastor and a therapist, but I'm too heart-centered to do this entrepreneurial thing because there's a lot of bros in this space and a lot of grunting and flexing, and that wasn't me. So I started this brand, this community called Unconventional Leaders, to really create a space for people who didn't feel like they fit inside of the box to lead or to build things. Maybe they were, didn't grow up from, privilege. Maybe they had a disability. Maybe they were like me, a white Southern Christian girl who mispronounces words all the time. But to really start taking our work seriously too and owning it. So it started there with the brand. And I freelanced at first. I didn't know what to do. I edited people's podcasts. I wrote blogs. I did anything that I could just to make some money and figure out this space. And that was about, goodness, close to 10 years ago. And I've been able to, through a lot of learning, a lot of failures, a lot of very few dollars coming in, figure out kind of my voice in this space. And it's been messy as hell. So yeah, there's some cool stuff that I've done, but there's 5,000 things behind me that didn't work.
What was that moment like that kind of took a different approach? Like you kept on posting 10 years ago and then leading up to the growth that you are right now, like the grit and the grind, the focus, the dedication. Like many entrepreneurs, the reason why they fail is they just don't stay the course to what that calling is, like we talked about, or just dedication to, refine and evolve what and how and that approach. Like, how did you take that? How do you kind of structure that? What was
Yeah.
your thoughts behind that first post you did 10 years ago to the evolution now?
Consistency is king is
Okay.
BS. BS. I am one of those rare breeds that when you tell me to be consistent, I will be consistent. I will be so consistent that I will do the same freaking thing over and over and over again until I die. Because I have that in me. So Gary V, I love Gary. We call him Uncle Gary in this house. He has helped our family so much in a variety of ways. So I say this with respect. But he kind of went on got his mark from talking about produce, consistency, consistency, consistency. So I was like, okay, I will post. I was posting like just finding things to post. I'm like, where's a good quote from a book I can take a picture of? And, just pulling stuff out of my ass, man, just to constantly post. And I told you earlier, I was doing, a podcast a day at one point because I was just thinking volume, 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 which is a really popular thing that's taught in this space. What shifted for me is when I realized that consistency was not about doing the same thing over and over and over again with no results. It was about not giving up in the constant pivots and adjustments to your plan. So I had the same plan for years and I was more consistent than anyone that I've known. But when I stopped that crap and started looking at data and seeing what worked and paid attention and started following the trails, obvious, but I hadn't done that. I stopped. And then stuff started working. So that wasn't that long ago. The business has done well over the past couple of years, but as far as my content and things working, it was probably 2 years ago or less where I started learning about storytelling and figuring out how to craft something that was interesting and paying really, really close to not just the physical data of how many people are viewing it and sharing it and engaging it and all that, but also to my soul's data of does this feel aligned with what I'm called to do, as opposed to chasing trends and hacks and all this stuff that we usually operate from because we're operating from a place of fear.
Talk about that. Like, what's the method behind storytelling that so many people miss? What's your process?
Nobody cares about you. They don't care about how smart you are. They don't care about any of the stuff that we're trying to get them to care about. We're like, look at me. I'm cute. I'm funny. I'm this. I'm that. I'm so smart. I got all this stuff going on. And until we learn how to frame whatever we're giving in a way that makes it about the other person, I mean, it's classic Donald Miller story brand type stuff. It's not going to win. And so you may have a really good message, but until you learn how to frame it to where you're the guide, the other person's the hero, and get to the point as fast as possible, at least within short form content. People are like, hey, Heather here today. And by that time, somebody's already gone. We live in a very, this AI. I mean, you're like all about this stuff. People are so overstimulated right now that they want to know off the bat, how do you talk to your wife without it turning into a fight? You talk to your wife without turning into a fight by this, 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 this. I immediately got into it. And so I think the two things to answer your question, A, make it about the other person. 2, frame it and get it so tight and short that you are giving so much value to them. They're like, who is Nathan? I have got to follow him.
How did you come up with this? Was this something you read or figured out, or did you just have to figure this out on your own that helped you craft that?
I consume a lot of content. A lot. It's disgusting. Like you would just get sick to your stomach. Seriously, like from the moment I have quiet time in the morning, but when I'm working out, when I'm driving, there's constant. So I'm just listening to a lot. I've read a lot of books. I've interviewed a lot of storytellers and I have fallen flat on my face. And I am so stubborn, Nathan. I didn't listen to any of it. None of it. I'm like, yeah, but I'm quirky and funny and cute and I can be, silly and people will like it. Wrong, 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 wrong. So a lot of my failures, I got so frustrated a couple of years ago. I was thinking, what the hell? I'm doing everything that these people are telling me to do. I'm producing, I'm showing up. I gave up a good career. My family has suffered because of my ridiculous dreams and made sacrifices. Why is none of this working? And again, getting really kind of out of the hyper, I know it sounds so weird. It sounds so lame, but kind of out of the rat race and the heavy production and getting really still with what am I trying to say? Am I actually doing a good job saying it? For me, that's when it started
Tell us
working.
your process even coming up with the content. Like, do you journal? Do
Good
you have
question.
like, people go on retreats and then they come up with, the 50 piece of content and then they kind
Yeah.
of articulate? How do you go about kind of thinking through what your audience and
Yeah.
storytelling?
So there's this book called A Technique for Producing Ideas. It's brilliant. There's this dude, he was in marketing like back in the 1918 or something like that. It's a short book. Look it up on Amazon. But he has this process. It's a 5-step process. And the first piece is collecting ideas. And I've taught a lot of workshops on this. I'm surprised how many people are like, what? Collecting ideas? What are you talking about? Because usually what we do is we're like, well, damn, it's content creation day. What's trending right now? As opposed to living a life of curiosity, and you have a process where you're collecting ideas throughout the day. And so really serious storytellers, you can listen to screenwriting interviews, people who, are make a living from writing. They all have a document. They have a place where they put ideas throughout the week. And so I have a spreadsheet that I use. I've showed it in public many times. It's ridiculous. It has multiple tabs on it. And let's say I'm at the gym and I'm listening to Nathan interview Elizabeth, and she drops this gem about how optimal living, high performance really is failure. And I'm like, gosh, that's so good. While I'm at the gym, I'll take a screenshot of that and I will either right then link it to my spreadsheet or I'll do it later. But essentially, I have this running document of all these little sparks of like, wow, that was really good. Ooh, that quote was awesome. Or, oh, my kid said this and it made me think of this. And it's messy. It's so messy. But then when I go and sit and write, I'll scan through the week of things that were natural inspirations for me because I believe inspiration comes from God and it's a living entity
Yeah.
and it's there for a reason. There's a reason that your soul was moved. And I go, wow, what was that? And I start there. You start there. And I think as creators, and I've been guilty of this too, we feel like we need to come up with content that's popping versus content that's resonating with you, and people
It
can
can,
feel the
yeah.
difference if you believe in what you're saying or not. And so, yeah, I want to pop too. I'm a marketer. I have a business. I want my stuff to work. I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't. But without fail, friend, like starting from a place of true inspiration is so important. So that's where I get my ideas.
Let me ask this one too, because there's some people that talk about just like you have to like focus on just one platform and just stay on that, right? And or look at the
Yeah.
expression of like, hey, I just got to be omnipresent and be everywhere. And you could cross post many of those things. Like, what's your technique or
Yeah.
strategy or even thoughts behind that?
Yeah. This one gets me fired up too. This whole thing gets me fired up. I don't know if you can pick that up
Yeah,
or
yeah.
not. I just love this stuff so much. There's so much psychology into it. You know what I mean? Um, I think it's different for every person. I normally preach and teach people to pick a couple, not normally one. One of them's usually your email list, something that you can control, but pick a couple of places that you're really going to pour into. And depending on your bandwidth and your team, going ahead and cross promoting. And I will admit, cross promoting is not the best way to go about it. In an ideal world, you're making unique content from all these platforms. But I don't know about you. You probably have a bigger team. I know you do all this stuff than I do. I don't have the bandwidth for there to be one person over every single platform and me being involved in it because I want to be involved in it. It's my voice. I do not outsource my voice. I don't have that bandwidth. So maybe if I was Gary Vee, cool. But I think people are looking at people like Gary Vee and saying, oh, I should be like that, as opposed to looking at the resources in your hand and just being faithful with it. So the reason I go ahead and say that, yeah, I would cross sometimes is because it's crazy. I remember it was a couple of years ago. I was really focused on TikTok at the time. And I posted this TikTok video on TikTok. And I was like, oh, what the heck? I'll put it on Facebook. Why not? And I never put anything on Facebook. Put it on Facebook. Nothing happened on TikTok. My following was on TikTok. And on Facebook, the latest I looked, it was at 10 point something million views. Got, pop sugared, covered it, all this stuff. And I would have never been able to, who knew that something like that would happen? I'm sure you've experienced that too, where you just throw something out and it just works. So for me, it's not the best strategy, but also if you're a solopreneur or you have a small team, I think it's more important not to Jesse Itzler says this, don't outsource your soul, stay closer to your content and be more creative in it and produce less and be on less places, as opposed to feeling like I have to be everywhere all the time and then watering down my voice, if that makes sense. But there's a balance with everybody.
Do you think they're going to actually shut down TikTok for everybody?
Who knows, man? They've been talking about that forever. I don't know.
So. I mean,
no idea.
So if you're listening to this, it was supposed to be in January 19th. That's just a few days away from when we're recording this right now. And it's I don't know if it will happen, but I just wanted to know what your expertise was, if that was going to happen or not, or what your thoughts were behind it.
I think that platforms are always going to change and humans are always going to remain the same. And the more that we as marketers can study humans more than we do technology, the better we're going to be.
So you write out the strategy. How often do you batch ahead of time? Is this like the day ahead?
That's a great question.
A month ahead, week ahead? How do you go about doing this?
So my reels take me 3 to 4 hours per reel, which is long for most people and short for like really serious people. So, but for me and my bandwidth and what I have to give, I only have the capacity to do 2 or 3 a week at that rate for what we're doing. I used to batch. I interviewed Brendan Kane. He is the author of Hook Point, and he's made it his life mission to study virality. And one of the things that he challenged me on is not batching too much ahead of time, because what you're doing is you are not leaving room for shifts and changes based off of data. And so if I batch 20 things and then 5 of them don't perform, I still have 15 in the can to do, as opposed to being able to take adjustments as I go. Now that's hard when have a family and your business and you're trying to schedule everything. So the happy medium for me, and everyone's different, is I have scheduled writing time daily. I do a little bit of writing every single morning. Now that's newsletter, that's scripts for the podcast, that's all that stuff. And then I have one filming day, and then I have usually one editing day. So we do first cuts where I can outsource a first cut, but I'm always in the second, third for reels. But again, I'm interested in filmmaking. I love media, and I'm fascinated with this cut over that one and the retention and all that piece. So I'm a weird, nerdy person. So that's the extent of batching, but I don't have more than a week ahead of time.
There's so many people that want to get started in being an online influencer, that want to create content. What have you found there are the biggest roadblocks for people to either start or stay committed? And then what kind of attitude and resolve should they have to be dedicated to do it?
The internal issue and the external issue. That's the way that I just heard that question. The internal one, and why I'm not going to get started, is just this ridiculous pressure to not look like a beginner, even though you are. And I've been guilty of this too. It was embarrassing when I hired that really buff girl to teach me how to be buff, which by the way, I'm still not. I didn't do very well in the program, but it was very embarrassing to have her watch me lift when I knew she could lift so much more. It was embarrassing, the strain on my face, and I did not look pretty, and having that vulnerable beginning stage. But it's the rite of passage for anything that you do, that you have to want it so bad that you're willing to be a beginner and be a beginner out loud. And we want to bypass that. So really, it's just this deep resolve that this is what I'm called to do. And it's okay if I look stupid to Nathan and he doesn't get it. Not many people get there, but I believe the ones who are called to can and will. The external issue is that we put so much emphasis on hacks and technique and all these things, which are tools to help elevate the message. They're not the message. And so we like, oh my goodness, what platform should I be on, and what hashtags and what tools should I be using, and this and that. And all that stuff's cool. I use that stuff. But when we put that as the primary, that's the reason somebody's popping or not, I'm sure you've seen this. There are creators out there who look like they just freaking rolled out of bed, and they're like saying it's like the most raw stuff, and people love it. And the reason is because they've tapped into heart, spirit, soul of what their message is. And we forget that as creators. And I understand, I did the same thing because I see Nathan popping over here. I'm like, what are you doing? What tools are you using? What process are you using? Whatever. As opposed to tapping into that conviction. I tell people all the time, we need more creators who are lit up.
How do you, so here's a difference like that I want to kind of ask you about. So there's the content creation, adding value, but then how do people make money from it? Is a question that people like. How do you go deep in there? Like you have heart and soul in the content, but buy this protein powder, and you're like, or whatever, right? That people are selling. Like people miss the heart behind it too. How do you post things that make it where you can build a business behind, like you have?
I tell people, there was somebody the other day who was wanting to work with me, and I told them no, because I asked them why they wanted to make content online, and they said to make money. And I'm like, we're not the right person, because the truth is there are a lot of people selling you this idea that if you start making content, that's going to be another revenue stream. And I don't know your experience, but that is not an immediate revenue stream. That is a long-term brand play that ideally will feed into your funnel or give you connections or whatever. But if you're looking for sales and immediate results, there are things that you can do a lot faster. And so I'm still a proponent of content. Content's changed my life, but go into it with the mindset that it's a long-term brand play. How do you make money with it? And I'm sure you've seen this too. There's a lot of creators who have very small followings and are making a lot of money. And I had an influencer, I don't even like that word, dude, like an influencer, whatever, on a call with me the other day. He had over 1 million followers, and he was crying. He was literally crying on the call with me because he said, I'm broke and they won't even buy my merch. You know what I'm saying? And that's the reality that people don't get with this. It needs to be a calling. There's a difference between an entrepreneur and a creator. And that's why I told you earlier that I'm here for the entrepreneurial creatives. But a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to get into the creation space because they see it as another revenue stream, as opposed to understanding that for it to work, there has to be a creative element into it. And if that's not you, that's okay. I'm not here. Everybody's like, oh, everybody needs a podcast. Everybody needs a YouTube. No, they don't. No, they don't. Not everybody's supposed to be on a mic.
What I love our conversation here, Heather. Like if people wanted to get connected with you further, to listen to your podcast, to connect with you on social, where would people find you the most? Where do you want people to go from here?
Send me a DM on Instagram and just tell me what you think. And you can tell me you disagree with me. I'm super open to hearing alternative views because I want to grow. But I think that's the number one thing. And it's me answering. It's not some bot or VA or whatever. Like I will voicemail you back.
I'll put those links down below. And I appreciate everybody listening here. Make sure to subscribe and like. Go connect with Heather. Go like her stuff. Connect with her further. And if you're wanting to start a brand and you're wanting to learn how to do this right, connect with Heather. Happy to make sure that she can connect with you further to grow. Or if you'd like my help to help you grow and scale your brand and be an influencer or an online person that's going to help you really make a bigger impact in the world, make sure to check out that training down below as well that I have. We will see you on the next episode. And thanks so much, Heather, for being on the podcast here.
Thank you.